Where's that bitch? I'll rip her hair out. My mother's voice tore through the phone so loudly I had to pull it away from my ear. My name is Naomi Keller, and the strange thing is, I wasn't scared. Not anymore. We broke into the door at the country house, she screamed, words tumbling over each other. There was nothing there anyway. Nothing. And then the thieves showed up. There was a trap. A trap. I sat on the edge of my bed in my apartment, barefoot on cold tile, listening as her world collapsed in real time. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Something inside me had already gone still. Your brother is in the hospital, she went on. Your father left work immediately. We rushed home to sort everything out. She stopped suddenly, breath hitching. And when we opened the apartment door, she didn't finish the sentence. I could hear chaos on the other end of the line, my father barking orders, my grandmother crying, sirens somewhere far too close. Doors slamming. Panic. The sound of people who were used to control realizing it had slipped through their fingers. I closed my eyes, because I knew exactly what they'd found. They'd found the empty rooms, the missing documents, the silence where certainty used to live. They thought I was hiding. They thought I'd run. They thought this was revenge born out of anger. They were wrong. This wasn't rage. This was planning. And as my mother screamed my name into the phone, spitting it like a curse, I finally understood something she never had. You don't need to destroy people to ruin them. You just need to let them walk straight into the consequences they never believed would reach them. My mother didn't have to finish the sentence. I could picture it perfectly because I designed it that way. They'd open my apartment door expecting to find me panicking, hiding, begging for help, the way I used to. Instead, they found an empty place that felt like a courtroom before the judge walks in. No photos. No extra keys. No family spare copies. And on the counter, exactly where my mother always dropped her purse when she came to snoop, a single white envelope. Her voice crackled again. Naomi, what did you do? Answer me. I didn't answer right away. I listened. Because the truth is, that phone call wasn't the start of this story. It was the moment the story finally caught up to them. See, my family had always treated my life like overflow storage. If they needed a spare room, they took it. If they needed someone to blame, they pointed at me. If they needed money, they didn't ask, they assumed. The country house was the worst example of that. It wasn't some cute little getaway like my mom told people. It was a place my grandfather bought, then quietly put in my name years ago because he didn't trust what my family turned into when money was involved. They never forgave me for it. They acted like I'd stolen something by simply existing on paper. So when I moved out and went silent, they did what they always do when I'm not useful. They panicked and got greedy. They decided the country house must have something hidden inside it. A safe, jewelry, cash, documents. Something they could grab before anyone noticed. And that's why they broke in. Not because they loved the place. Not because they missed family summers. Because they thought my life still belonged to them. What they didn't know, what my mother still didn't know as she screamed into the phone, was that I'd stopped living like a victim weeks ago. I'd started living like a witness. The trap wasn't thieves the way she thought. The trap was certainty. I'd updated the locks, installed cameras, registered the alarm system under my name only. And the night they forced that door open, the system did exactly what it was built to do. It called the police. My brother didn't get hurt because I set him up. He got hurt because he ran from the consequences like he always had, fast, careless, convinced rules were for other people. I finally spoke, my voice calm enough to make her angrier. Mom, I said softly, why were you breaking into a house that isn't yours? She went silent. On the other end, I heard my father hiss something under his breath, sharp, panicked, like he just realized the question was a blade. My mother came back louder. Don't twist this. We were checking on property. You're making us sound. Like what? I cut in. Like people who break in for things that don't belong to them? She inhaled hard, then said the real fear out loud. What's in the envelope, Naomi? I looked at my own copy of it, folded neatly in my bag, the ink already dry, the plan already moving. It's not what's in it, I said. It's who it's for. And somewhere behind her, I heard a different voice, calm, professional, speaking inside my apartment. A voice that didn't belong to my family. That's when my mother finally finished her sentence in a whisper, like the words tasted like poison. There are people here. Exactly. Because the moment they opened my apartment door, they didn't find me. They found the truth, waiting. I stayed on the line while they panicked. My mother's breathing came fast and uneven now, nothing like the woman who'd just threatened to rip someone's hair out. In the background, I heard unfamiliar voices, measured, calm, the kind that don't rise to meet chaos. "Ma'am, please step away from the counter." That one sentence told me everything. They weren't alone anymore. "What is this?" my father demanded, his voice suddenly thin. "Why are there strangers in our daughter's apartment?" Daughter. He only used that word when it served him. I pictured it clearly. The open door, the lights already on, the envelope torn open with shaking hands. The documents laid out neatly, just the way I'd left them. No drama. No note written in anger. Just facts, printed and organized. Weeks earlier, I'd learned something important. People like my family don't fear emotions. They fear paperwork, leases, ownership records, police reports, and the quiet authority of people who know exactly what they're looking at. "Naomi," my mother hissed into the phone, trying to pull her voice back under control. "You need to explain this right now." I leaned back against the wall and let the silence stretch. "I already did," I said finally. "You just never listened." I remembered the night I decided to stop warning them. My brother had laughed when I asked him not to use my name for deliveries anymore. My mother had waved me off. "Family shares things," she'd said. "Don't be dramatic." So I stopped talking. Instead, I changed passwords, updated records, filed reports I'd been putting off for years because I didn't want to look difficult. I documented every time they used my address, my property, my name. Not revenge. Preparation. "Your brother is hurt." My mother snapped, desperation creeping in. "How can you be so cold?" I closed my eyes. "He's hurt because he broke into a house that isn't his," I said, and then ran when alarms went off. That's not cruelty. That's cause and effect. Behind her, someone spoke again, closer this time. "Sir, we'll need you to come with us to answer a few questions." My father cursed under his breath. That was the moment it hit them. This wasn't a family argument they could bury. This wasn't something they could smooth over with a story later. They had walked straight into a situation that had witnesses. And no matter how loud my mother screamed my name into the phone, there was one thing she couldn't do anymore: rewrite what was happening right in front of them. The shouting didn't help them anymore. That was new. My mother kept talking, faster now, sharper. But her words were bouncing off something solid. Rules. Procedures. People who didn't care who she was or how important she thought her family was. "Naomi did this on purpose," she snapped. "She's unstable. She's always been like this." I almost laughed. That line had saved her before. Teachers, relatives, friends. If I spoke up, I was dramatic. If I stayed quiet, I was moody. Either way, I was the problem. But not today. "Ma'am," the calm voice said again, closer to the phone now. "We're going to need you to lower your voice." Lower her voice. I'd never heard anyone say that to my mother and mean it. I pictured my apartment the way I'd left it. Clean, empty, intentional. The documents spread neatly on the counter. The camera light blinking softly in the corner, recording everything without emotion. She wasn't being accused because of something I said. She was being questioned because of what she did. "Why are there police reports here?" my father asked suddenly, panic breaking through his anger. "Why is there a timeline?" "Because I learned something you never expected," I thought. "People like you don't prepare for consequences. You prepare excuses." I spoke again, keeping my voice level. "You used my address. You used my property. You broke into a house that doesn't belong to you. I wrote it down. I filed it. I waited." "For what?" my mother demanded. "For you to prove me right," I said. There was a pause. A long one. Then a different voice came through the phone, calm and professional. Miss Keller, this is Officer Ramirez. We'd like to ask you a few questions as well, but for now, I need you to know you're not in any trouble. Not in trouble. That sentence hit harder than any apology ever could. On the other end, my mother went very quiet. Because for the first time in her life, screaming wasn't fixing anything. And the worst part, for her, was realizing this wasn't a trap made of anger. It was a trap made of patience. And she had walked into it all by herself. The silence on the line lasted too long. Not the dramatic kind. The dangerous kind. I could hear my mother breathing, trying to decide which version of herself would work best. The victim, the authority, or the wounded parent. She finally chose the one she always did when she felt cornered. This is being taken out of context, she said, slower now. Careful. You know how things look when outsiders get involved. Outsiders. That word told me everything. The problem wasn't what they'd done. It was who was watching. You're making us sound like criminals, she continued. Family matters should stay private. I closed my eyes. I'd heard that line my whole life. It was her way of erasing things, turning harm into misunderstanding, turning boundaries into betrayal. You broke into a house that isn't yours, I said evenly. That's not a feeling. That's a fact. She scoffed. We were checking on property. You're twisting this. No, I replied. I stopped letting you. In the background, I heard papers shifting. Someone asking for ID. Another voice reading something out loud, dates, addresses, my name. My father interrupted, sharp and tight. Naomi, why are there statements here? Why does it say we've been warned before? Because I learned how to write things down, I thought. Because silence only protects the people who benefit from it. My mother jumped back in, her voice brittle now. You're doing this to punish us. Do you realize how this looks? That question again. Always image. Always reputation. I do, I said quietly. It looks like the truth. Another pause. Then a sound I didn't expect. Crying. Not loud. Not apologetic. Frustrated. Like someone realizing the script they've used for years isn't working anymore. We gave you everything we could, she whispered. How could you do this to us? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I didn't do anything, I said. I just stopped fixing it for you. And somewhere inside my apartment, a pen scratched against paper, sealing a version of events my mother could no longer rewrite. For the first time, the story wasn't hers to tell. The next voice I heard wasn't my mother's. Ma'am, the officer said calmly, we're going to need you and your husband to step aside for a moment. Step aside. That phrase landed harder than any accusation. It meant the room had shifted. It meant decisions were being made without asking for her permission. What does that mean? My mother demanded. Are we being accused of something? No, the officer replied. We're establishing facts. Facts. The one thing she'd spent her life outrunning. I listened as chairs scraped against the floor, as footsteps moved away from the phone. Someone asked my father to confirm his name. Another person asked about the country house. Why the alarm was triggered, why the locks were forced, why they ran. My brother's name came up. Again. He's in the hospital, my mother said sharply, trying to regain control. He was hurt. That should matter. It does, the officer answered. That's why we're documenting everything. Documenting. I looked around my quiet apartment and felt something settle in my chest. Not relief. Not triumph. Finality. Because once things are documented, they stop being opinions. My mother came back on the line, her voice lower now. Controlled. Dangerous. You think you're very smart, don't you? No, I said. I think I got tired. Tired of what? Tired of being the cleanup crew for your choices. She exhaled slowly. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I replied. I did. There was a pause. Then she said the sentence I'd been waiting for my entire life. We didn't think it would go this far. I closed my eyes. That's the problem, I said. You never do. On the other end, the officers began explaining next steps. Reports. Follow-ups. Statements. Timelines. Words that don't care about tone or tears. The room had chosen its side. And for the first time, it wasn't hers. The call ended without a goodbye. Not because they were done talking, but because someone else had taken over. Later that night, an officer called me back.
Calm.
Professional. The kind of voice that doesn't exaggerate because it doesn't need to. Miss Keller, he said, based on what we've seen tonight, there will be follow-up questions. About the country house. About the use of your address. About previous warnings. Warnings. I sat on the edge of my bed and let that word sink in. They hadn't just crossed a line tonight. They'd crossed it before. Quietly. Repeatedly. Counting on familiarity to protect them. It wouldn't. By morning, messages started coming in, not apologies, not concern, but panic wrapped in politeness. We need to talk. This got misunderstood. You know your brother didn't mean.
I didn't reply.
Because consequences don't need conversation to work. My brother was discharged with a fractured wrist and a police statement he couldn't joke his way out of. My parents were instructed not to contact me directly until matters were reviewed. And the country house was officially flagged in a way that would make future surprises very uncomfortable. No arrests. No dramatic handcuffs. Something worse. Restrictions. Loss of access. Loss of narrative. Loss of the assumption that they could do whatever they wanted and clean it up later. That afternoon, I sat in my quiet apartment and realized something that made my chest ache in an unexpected way. They weren't angry because I hurt them. They were angry because I stopped protecting them. And now, every step they took had to be careful. Measured.
Watched.
For people like my family, that's the harshest punishment of all. Weeks passed. Not the dramatic kind. No shouting matches, no surprise visits, no long messages filled with guilt and blame. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that settles in when people realize there's nothing left they can say that won't be written down somewhere. My mother tried once more. A message sent late at night, careful and polished, like a press release. We're still your family.
We can fix this.
Let's move forward. I stared at the screen for a long time before locking my phone and setting it face down. Because moving forward had always meant one thing in our family, pretending the past never happened. And I was done pretending. The country house stayed closed. The apartment stayed mine. My address stopped appearing on documents that didn't belong to me. The cameras stayed on, not because I was afraid, but because I'd learned something important. Safety isn't about hiding. It's about clarity. I heard through relatives that my mother told a different story now. A quieter one. One where misunderstandings happened, where stress played a role, where no one was really at fault. She didn't scream my name anymore. She didn't threaten. She avoided it. That was how I knew something had changed. People like her don't stop out of remorse. They stop when the ground stops moving beneath them. One evening, I walked through my apartment and noticed how still it felt. No tension in the walls. No sense that someone might barge in and claim ownership over my life. Just space.
Mine.
I thought about the phone call, the shouting, the panic, the trap they swore I set. The truth was simpler. I didn't build a trap. I built a boundary and they ran into it at full speed. So if you're listening to this and you've ever been told to stay quiet to keep the peace, ask yourself something honestly. Is it really peace? Or just silence that keeps the wrong people comfortable? Because the moment I stopped carrying their chaos, it collapsed under its own weight. And they never saw it coming.